Hey guys. So this is my third time trying to record this. Let's hope we can get through it. Okay, so this is last Thursday's graphic design basics class. Uh, if you're joining us on YouTube, it's part of our First Step Accelerator program. It is not commonly taught, but this particular group has been with me for a year, and they continue to surprise me in terms of wanting to learn more. So as long as they're willing, I'm happy to do it. So this week or last week, we talked about design principles and the basics so that they could make better decisions in terms of what they're putting on social media or if they're doing their website banner, and just have a basic understanding of how design works and what to try and avoid. Okay. So there are basically 12 basic principles of design: contrast, balance, emphasis, proportion, hierarchy, repetition, rhythm, pattern, white space, movement, variety, and unity. They all work together. They don't all work together at one time, hopefully. So we're going to talk about that. But, at the end of the day, these principles come together to create a unified vision, a visually appealing graphic, advertisement, social media post, and hopefully focuses on your key takeaway, which could be your slogan, a new product. It should lead into a call to action. You should almost always have a call to action connected to your element that you're creating. So whether it be a social media post or whether it be on your website, there should always be a flow that's going to happen or that you hope is going to happen. Emotion. I talk about this all the time. And I think as marketers, we tend to use Apple a lot. But the truth is that that's what they've excelled at. And so when you're creating a good brand or a good visual of any kind, really, you want to relate to the person's lifestyle, right? You want them to visualize holding the phone or having the computer in their home or, having the best HVAC system. It doesn't really matter what you're selling if you can tie into their emotion. And different markets will have different goals in terms of what you're trying to tap into. Are you trying to tap into the saver? Are you trying to tap into the one that feels connected because they've got the best new iPhone? And again, when we talk about Apple, all of these things create emotions, and a good brand will make you feel like you're a part of something. And Nike, another one that comes to mind, right? Socially responsible, you can get behind them and you feel like you're a part of their mission. So you're there, it's no longer them and you, it's they together. So that is where creating an emotion comes in. And let me tell you, emotion is a huge buzzword in marketing right now. I don't see it as a buzzword. I've been using it since 2016. It is tied to every decision you make, financially or otherwise. Some type of emotion ties in to what made you respond the way you did. So if you can capture on the positive side of that, if you can capture that through image, it's much like music, right? It sticks in your head. And that is successful branding. That is successful graphic design. Okay. Always a purpose. And I will say, For small businesses just starting out who maybe don't have a ton of experience with their brand, are just getting comfortable with it, are still drilling down, before you go to your graphics, take some time to brainstorm and plan out the messaging you're hoping to relay. Okay, it will help you. So it will keep you focused on what you're wanting to accomplish, and it'll help you when you actually go to look at graphics or images to add or use in your designs. So you want to do everything on purpose, right? And you want your users to be able to interact, whether that is just to understand and to comprehend what your message is. It needs to be precise. So focus on it, do a little preliminary work before you get to the design part. You want to have a rough draft of your vision, so to speak. And sometimes that's hard. So, you brainstorm, be short with your goals, and then go to your graphics and see how they relate to what you're actually trying to achieve. And hopefully, if you do a little bit of preliminary work, you'll see the right graphic, and it will talk to you. You'll be like, yep, that's the one, right? Harmony, just like it sounds, it's, very similar to unity, although I think unity is the most important. But harmony is aesthetically pleasing, right? It's the flow of an image. It's the flow of a graphic. It's text placement. It may be a button placement, but it should have a sense of consistency in it. And be very careful that there's nothing from left to right that's not purposely there, because what ends up happening is it's a gap stop. It stops your brain from the flow of thought. So you want to make sure that it's harmony, right? It's like a little melody, and it's going to stick with you, and you're going to flow through that thought process, and you're going to get to the call to action or the info that you want to relay to your customer. Balance, probably the most important, and yet can be the most difficult part of design. And when you're just starting out, I'm going to highly recommend that you stick with simple design. Don't go into patterns or line elements too much. They can become very, very easy to get incorrect. And unfortunately, if you do that, again, you're creating a gap stop. So minimal use of elements that are design or, are shapes, particularly when you're starting out. Just keep it simple. And balance refers to how elements are distributed along the center line in design. So another misconception, I think, is that, designers just throw stuff up there, and if it looks good, that's okay. There's quite a bit of measuring and precision that goes into placement on a graphic. And that is because of how the eye works and how the brain works behind everything. And we want to make sure that we're not causing any disconnect in those two aspects. So you have either symmetrical, which is going to be easier to achieve if you're a new designer, than asymmetrical. But they both run off of the horizontal and the vertical line. So there still has to be a flow that occurs, even if things are off balance, like in an asymmetrical way. They're still going to be distributed evenly and correctly. And you're going to be very careful about the size of product images compared to text. You want to make sure that, again, we go back to your hierarchy. You want to make sure that the important elements are the focal point. And you want to make sure that one isn't necessarily overpowering the other. Example, your product image isn't overpowering the product tag or messaging. So there's there's some massaging that takes place there, and there's some precision, really, the only word I can think of. The other thing is when you're doing design, and it sounds weird, but if you're on a computer, particularly if you're on a pretty decent sized screen, step back 20 feet if you can, and take a look at the graphic that you're working on. That will assist you in seeing it from a user perspective. And it's often very, very hard to do that because we're working in it. Much like it's hard to, proofread your own work because you already know what it's supposed to say. You're not looking at it like the consumer is. So you want to make sure, if you don't have someone who can review your work for you, you want to make sure that you have a good perception of what you're putting out there. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to view it from a distance or view it in a mock-up. Use Canva and go to mock-ups and actually see what it looks like on the other side, on the end result. Hierarchy, which I thought we'd already talked about. Hierarchy is really simple to describe when we're talking about web design. So your menu, your buttons, your above the fold. When we were doing branding, we talked a lot about above the fold, and that is, all the content that is in eye view as soon as you get to a website, depending on people's screens. So we keep it above the fold for the masses. Again, we try and hit every target we can when it comes to graphics, and make sure that nothing's being cut off oddly. So it's better to have a shorter banner and make sure it's in the viewpoint of everyone than to have a really big one and it only shows up on one screen or on a big laptop or Mac. So be careful of that. Keep your proportions appropriate for most devices, so that when you're talking, especially when you're talking about digital, so that it can be seen. On Canva for social media, they have markers. I've taught everyone where to see those markers. So just make sure you're keeping your important elements within that working area. White space, probably one of my favorite things. It's interesting because white space or neutral space, negative space. It's an area that has no element, right? Just the color itself. And I think it's really important to keep a design uncluttered and easy for your brain to process it. Now, having said that, right now we are coming out of the white trend that we had, I'm going to say 17 moving forward to probably 20-ish, 21 maybe, beginning of 21, where everybody wanted white kitchens, white floors, everything was white. Or it was a gray wash white. Now we're coming out of that, I guess, that need for calm. And I think, again, I think emotion plays a lot in our preference for certain colors. And I think, having said the last 3 years were challenging for a lot of people would be an understatement. So I think people wanted harmony. They wanted balance. They wanted simplicity. And they didn't want a lot of bold. Everything was unsure. We're starting to come on to the other side of that. And in that, we're starting to see different color choices. So right now, really trending hot colors are a very, very dark blue, almost not quite navy. It's maybe even a little darker than navy. Hunter green, for those of you that lived through the 80s, is coming back with a vengeance. Not my favorite color, but it is very prominent in interior design right now, in accent design, and it's a strong color. And the color of the year with Pantone is digital lavender. So purple is still playing a part in trend. This year it's a little more muted. than it was in the year before. But regardless, please be cautious when you're using trend colors. So it's certainly not how we did your branding. And I would prefer that you use trend colors as accent. You can use them. You can still incorporate them so that you are on trend in social media, and your graphics are looking great and people want to resonate with them. But be mindful of overusing trend colors and having them become an expectation of your brand, because trends change. And they just do. Every 3 or 4 years, you see a transition. It usually starts around the 1.5 to 2 year mark, and then it gradually changes over, and then you'll see the same cycle repeat itself. So be careful when it comes to doing anything in a trend, other than accents or small pieces of it. You can use color or images with that, that color palette. But again, keep your logo traditional, classic, timeless. And those are my 3 favorite words for a logo. They should stand the test of time, as should good brand. So, and a good example of that is Tropicana. Everybody knows that, big container of orange juice that's in the grocery store. They did a big redesign. I don't remember now. It could even be might even be 2.5 years ago. And it was a fail. It was a fail. People didn't resonate with it. They couldn't connect with the new brand packaging. And Tropicana, I believe, they went back to their old packaging. So, pick your brand colors and feeling carefully. Stick to the basics. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you can play around with the accents in that manner. So use trends like salt and pepper, a little bit of sprinkle here and there. Okay. The last one that I'm going to talk about, because I didn't talk about patterns, or I think they're a little bit harder to navigate. So we're not going to focus too much time on that. But the last one I'm going to talk about is unity. And this one, in my opinion, is the most important. And again, if you took my branding class at the beginning, we go through, Tim Hortons ads without the logo. We go through A&W ads without the logo. But yet everyone knows who they are. And that is because their style, their overall cohesiveness of their messaging is so strong. So you can tell an A&W ad you don't need the logo. Same thing with Tim Hortons. You don't need the logo. You don't even need their red cup. And you can still tell exactly who they are. And that, didn't happen overnight. These are companies that have been around for decades, but they've kept one thing, including Tim Hortons logo. It's maybe adjusted slightly over the years. Consistent. And, it's not always something that a small business owner wants to hear. You just have to trug on, but it's really true. Apple was not Apple when they first came out. Apple was a major failure when they first launched their first computers. So they didn't achieve what they'd hoped to do. And, they continued on. And again, through the years, Apple's Apple, their little icon, has remained the icon. It has changed color. One year they had a metallic. I think they might even still use it. And they have their colored apple, but they've always kept the apple the same. So they've played around with trends, and they've, embraced trend designs, but without losing their brand. So if you can do that, I think that's really important. And I think you've come a long way in understanding design if you can manage that and you can navigate that. And if you're going to make changes at all, do them gradually. Don't make them so that the eye can really tell. If you're going to change, I think one of my students, we're working on changing her red because I think it's a little bit too dark, too much on the orange side for her. And we're going to gradually do that. We're not going to flip it over to the brighter red right off the bat. We're going to gradually transition that so that it doesn't look so wonky on her social media and her material. So, okay. That is the basics of design. And I mean basics, but it gives you a really good starting point. Choose pictures that are easy to look at. Think about your client. The more noise or the busier an element a design image is that you're using, the harder it's going to be to create the emotion that you want behind it. And that's just experience talking. Typically, less is more in design. Unless you're in Tribeca in New York and you want a really, really, lime green kitchen, which you can have, you want to talk to the masses and you want to keep things easy on the brain to quickly digest an idea, a concept, and a call to action. So you're asking mentally for the brain to do quite a bit at a very quick time. So cohesive is going to assist you in everything with there, because then the brain's not fighting with, noise in the background or this really weird purple on the right-hand side. There's a really easy flow, and it goes from left to right, and your brain expects that, and it can relate and it can digest that really quickly. So, okay. This week we are going to do a review of a bunch of marketing. So that's what we're going to do. And then I think we're going into TikTok. I'm doing my homework. We'll see. So anyway, I will talk to you all soon. Bye.